Thank you, William, for this kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I am Esther Arias, a PhD student at ICD in a partnership program with University of Bucharest Political Science faculty. My research proposal is about historical memory and Colombian diaspora. But today, I don't want to talk about Colombian communities abroad. What I pretend to do is take some primary ideas of the memory discipline, and I will try to apply them to the film category. That is why the title of my presentation is Historical Memory and Film Representation, which aim is to show how historical memory films can be a vehicle to approach the past, not only to tell us what happened before, but to promote an active role of citizenship. I have organized my presentation in 3 parts. In the first one, I will cover the origin of memory, or at least I will try to track the roots when memory began to be considered a very important aspect of human life. Then I will present 2 key aspects in modern and contemporary discussions about memory. In the second part, I will present the issue of film representation as a visual art form that can contribute to update the past by including live memories. To better illustrate this dynamic, I will present a case and I will present a film trailer which topic will be discussed as well. Finally, I will provide some general conclusions. So let's begin with the roots of memory. Does anyone recognize these pictures? Maybe anyone from Greece? No? Okay. The first one is the representation of Mnemosyne. Mnemosyne was the inventress of words, of language. She was responsible for naming all objects, and by doing so, she gave humans the possibility to communicate and to converse to each other. She was also responsible for giving humans the gift of reason. That is why she's considered to be the first philosopher. But most importantly, she was the goddess of memory. Now, related to the second image, Mnemosyne was the mother of the 9 muses. As you know, the 9 muses were 9 beautiful young ladies that were goddesses also, and they were the source of inspiration for science, art, and literature. One of these ladies was Clio, or is Clio. Clio is the muse of history. Sometimes she is represented with a book, with books, but also with a glove and a clock in order to send a key message, and it is that history should include all places and all times. So we can say if Mnemosyne was if Clio was Mnemosyne's daughter, then we can say that history cannot exist without memory. Why I decide to begin my presentation with mythology? What we call mythology nowadays was a kind of religion for the ancient Greek world. They tried to explain the origin of the world using myths, and gods and goddesses took human forms in order to influence the daily life, including politics and philosophy. It is not a contradiction that philosophy was the first man's attempt to put an end to the mythical explanation of the world. It was not an easy transition to explain the origin of the world using more reason than imagination. Some philosophers paid a very big price. Socrates was one of them. As you know, he denied different gods and goddesses of the time. He had a trial, and he was killed. But what they actually say about memory? Let's begin with Socrates. First of all, everything that we know about Socrates was because Plato, who was his pupil, took his main ideas and put them in his books. But Socrates had objections against writing. There is a text that I want to introduce now, a text written by Plato, And in this test, Socrates tells the story about a conversation between the ancient Egyptian god Thew, inventor of letters, inventor of writing, and the king Amun. This test clearly expresses why he opposed to writing. So I will open quotes, and I'm going to read an extract of what the god Thew said to the king Amun about his invention. I open quotes. O king, here is something that once learned will make the Egyptians wiser and will improve their memory. I have discovered a passion for memory and for wisdom. The king, however, replied, O most ingenious you, one man can give birth to the elements of an art, but only another can judge how they can benefit or harm those who will use them. And now, since you are the father of writing, your affection for it has made you describe its effects as the opposite of what they really are. In fact, it will introduce forgetfulness into the soul of those who learn it. They will not practice using their memory, because they will put their trust in writing, which is external and depends on science that belongs to others, instead of trying to remember from the inside, completely on their own. So the issue of writing or not memory seems not to be a matter nowadays, but then when I will cover some aspects in modern discussions about memory, we are going to see that it is not always taken for granted. We can identify two elements of memory that Socrates introduced. And it is that memory is not only the act of remembering, memory is also the act of forgetting. I will move to Plato and Aristotle. Both thought memories as thoughts inscribed on wax tablets that could be erased easily and used again. They were interested in recollective memory, let's say a memory that occurs when an individual calls a particular event of the past. For the first, the emphasis is on recollecting what was impressed in the wax tablet before the erasure of birth. Therefore, the process of recollection always involves somebody else. On the other side, Aristotle considered recollection as an autonomous, individual, and self-motivated search. I want to start here concerning all these metaphors about memory, but my intention was to point out how, since the beginning of the time, memory was a matter of reflection, even if the first philosopher focused on individual memories. No one of them worried about what actually determines what we remember and what we forget. So let me please make a big jump to the last century. Of course, there are many aspects to be considered in modern and contemporary discussions about memory, but I will just cover two aspects, one academic and other historical. Concerning the first, I want to introduce some ideas of Maurice Holbach. Maurice Holbach was a French sociologist, and he is a reference for all scholars coming from different disciplines that are interested in memory studies. He tried to answer the question that I already mentioned, what actually determines what we remember and what we forget. His primary thesis is that even the act of remembering or the act of forgetting something is an individual capacity. Human memory can only function within a collective context, that is, collective memory. Collective memory is plural because there are different groups in society. As you can read, he literally said, it is in society that people normally acquire their memories. It is in society that they recall, recognize, and localize their memories. This process is possible because of the existence of social frameworks such as family, religion, social class, nation-states, language, among others. That said, we can detect two elements in his work, identity and continuity. Identity by belonging to one or more groups, and continuity because collective memory is alive through tradition. For him, it is not necessary that memory is reading, so like Socrates. If reading, it is because a particular group doesn't exist anymore and memories have been integrated by history. Always differentiate memory from history. Memory, as already pointed, is alive. History, at least for him, is dead. That is why indeed he never promoted the use of the term historical memory, finding those terms opposite to each other. To be honest, I take distance from this proposal because I consider that, yes, memory is emotional if you want, and history as a discipline has its own rigor, its own techniques, but when you combine both, you can have a better picture of the past. You can use this picture to realize how is your reality and how you can contribute to solve current problematics. In the English translation of his work by the University of Chicago in 1992, they introduced his central question as, how do we use our mental image of the present to reconstruct our past? And since then, others have considered that a more important question nowadays should be, how do we use our image archive related to the past in order to improve our present and construct our future? Now I will move to the second aspect in contemporary discussions about memory. And this historical event is without any doubt the Second World War. There are many reasons. I just go over 4 of them. First, after Second World War, many ethical and moral issues grow out. After extermination of different groups, the international community promised itself never again to allow atrocities like those of that conflict. And they create a roadmap to ensure the rights of all persons in any place at any time. I know this year we are celebrating 70 years of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and you can say how we as international community progress. I do believe that it was not just a tool for nation states. It was also a tool for civil society to denounce and fight against any abuse. Another aspect is the transitional studies related to transitional justice. As maybe you know, the Nuremberg trial took place here in Germany, and it was a model of accountability focused on individual responsibility. Since then, transitional studies, transitional justice have evolved and have been progressing. That is why nowadays there are practices such as true commissions, building nation, commemoration, reparation that are part of transitional justice. For the third aspect, there was an increasing importance of the witness and how we deal with trauma. I want to use again the Nuremberg trial because it confronted the perpetrator with their deeds, face to face in an encounter that was supposed to restore the lost moral order. The 3 points already mentioned are a proof of intentionality to say no to historical amnesia, to the extent that memory work is now considered a useful tool of conflict resolution worldwide, as there is a belief that unaddressed past legacy actually fuel conflicts. Summarizing all these elements after Second World War contribute to pay attention there wherever atrocities were committed, wherever new victims appear, victims of dictatorships in different countries, victims of authoritarian regimes, victims of illegal armed groups, etc. While solidarity with victims will be always important, overexposition of past victims could draw the attention away from current problematics. Authors like the French-Bulgarian philosopher Svetan Todorov point out an abusive exposition of the victimhood. He, for instance, declared in his book Hope and Memory, Lessons of the Last Century the following, I open quote, "Today, the memory of the Second World War remains alive in Europe, preserved through countless events, publications, and broadcasts of radio or television. But the ritual repetition of 'don't forget' does not impact with not visible consequence on the process of ethnic cleansing, torture, and mass executions that occur at the same time within Europe itself." I close quotes. First of all, he was not saying anything against any victim of the Second World War, but he just tried to say memory is neither good nor bad, it all depends on how it's used. And in my opinion, Todorov was right when he warned of the sacralization of memory. In other words, when in spite of commemoration for past atrocities, we are not able to apply lessons to the present to construct a better future. Well, I have covered the first part of my presentation. Now I'm going to move to the film representation of memory, particularly historical memory films. We can consider that history is built with all kinds of documents, including film production. Approach to the past through cinema can take different forms, but what is important is that what is represented can contribute to update the past to the current or present realities. At the same time, it is true that cinema or film industry have privileged some events, some eras, some memories, and have completely forgot or manipulate others. In any case, I do believe that films are vehicles to recall the past and realize how far things have really changed. Before introducing my case as example of this relationship between memory and film, I just want to give a few words about some of the forms that cinema can approach the past. We have historical film. They are engaged with the past, of course, whether recent or distant, with different grade of fiction, but they don't introduce live memories. Then we have documentaries. They are supposed to be factual works, so they are not fictional. However, there are many documentaries propagandistic or not objective. And then we have historical memory films that, according to the definition, combine history, real facts, and memories that, of course, are subjective and framed by the belonging to a group or by sharing an identity. Historical memory films takes into account the emotional dimension. They don't aspire to scientific objectivity because it takes into account the experience of the protagonist, often marginalized social sectors like ethnic minorities, displaced people, children, etc. And here is where I find the added value of this category of film production, because they give the voice to all possible sectors, and at the end it is a healthy exercise of democracy in the big screen. Well, I'm going to move to the film, but before I want to give you a background. Maybe you can quickly read in 10 seconds and you can tell me which country is all about here. Yes, yes, it is El Salvador. Okay. The film or the film trailer that I want to share with you today is Innocent Voices. Maybe, 1 minute please, maybe some of you have already seen this film that appeared in 2004. It is a 2-minute trailer and I will discuss later.
Las caras de nuestros niños han perdido la inocencia de su espíritu. En su lugar solo encontramos el miedo, porque nuestros niños han perdido la esperanza de sobrevivir.
Los siguientes niños a formar.
Todos teníamos miedo de cumplir los 12. Porque venía el ejército y te llevaba.
Chavita, no te voy a mentir diciendo que todo esto va a mejorar. Porque se va a poner peor antes de que mejore.
Los escépticos dicen, si Dios existiera no habría guerras. Y yo les contesto, si los hombres obedecieran las leyes de Dios, entonces no habría guerras. Hermanos, es el momento de que alcemos nuestra voz contra ellos. Oye, hermanos, ya no basta con rezar.
Okay. Why he decided? Well, the film, as I mentioned, appeared in 2004, and the film, according to the librettist Oscar Torres, on which real story is based, he said that he was sent to the USA in 1984 in order to prevent him to integrate the army. So there are 20 years in between. Why he decided to talk about it 20 years after? It was not to open the Pandora box about what happened in El Salvador when he was a child. But after the New York attacks, he realized that he never coped with his trauma. And he found that writing his history, his story, would be a kind of therapy. And at the same time, sharing his story, he could talk about current issues. Indeed, for society, also the civil war in El Salvador ended in 1992, the problem of child soldiers remained. There was a report issued by an NGO at the time of the film appeared, indicating the use of child soldiers in more than 20 conflicts around the globe. So, why I decided to take this all film today? Maybe if you read this definition, you are going to have your own conclusions. So, it is not just about a girl or a boy with a gun. Child soldiers could be under different ways, under different manners. That is why nowadays there is almost a consensus to use the term child associated with an armed force or an armed group. Once again, this film was just an example. The topic could have been other, but it helps me to show how could historical memory through film contribute to make real the motto never again. One option could be the proposed by Michael Rothberg, a professor in California University, who introduced the concept of multidirectional memory. For him, the existence of plural memories not necessarily should be an scenario of competitive memories, because memories can interact and articulate visions from one to another in a productive way. To use again a metaphor, I include this image of Roman god Janus, yes? His poem is associated with the transition between war and peace. And as you can see, he's usually depicted with two faces because he looks to the past, but also he looks to the future. Related to the thematic of the film, some last words about it. Last week, the international community commemorated the day against the use of child soldiers. And following different declaration of government representative of members of NGOs, members of the different agencies of United Nations, that they all agree that we as international community should make all as possible to prevent early indoctrination, because as I said, it goes beyond the stereotype of boys or girls with a gun. And I really consider that we as cultural diplomacy students, but also as cultural diplomacy practitioners, we can contribute at our own level, sometimes maybe with basic things like making public awareness campaign about current problematics. Finally, to conclude, I want to summarize some points of my presentation. First, don't be afraid to take memories in plural as a source of history. They will never be complete, but they will provide elements for a better understanding of past events. Second and third point, don't take these memories just to have a look over the past, but to wake solidarity with current problematic. And last but not least, films are a kind of art to amuse, but films are also a platform to advocate for human rights. So you can ask yourself what kind of film consumer you are when related to historical memory. That is what I want to share with you today. I took longer. I don't know if there is. Okay, thank you.